afternoon and welcome to another live stream. It's Lindsay from Freedom Media WA. Hopefully you had a joyous Christmas with your family wherever you were, and however you saw the new year in, then I hope it was a good one. So moving into 2024, here we are outside Royal Perth Hospital, and I've been following an issue for the last couple of weeks. And hence the reason we've come here today. We will turn around and just shortly show you that there is mainstream media here following this particular issue. In today's headlines, we're talking about here the Nurses Union in a civil war. And what we have is we have a group of nurses who are fighting back against the direction that they are to opt the pay dispute given to WA nurses. Of course, we followed this back in November 2022, and you may ask, why are we following this particular issue? Well, there's a number of nurses here that we have done a number of interviews over the last couple of years, and it will become evident in a moment when we get some footage, but essentially they're, well, we'll just pan around, show you the group that's actually here, and then see if we can get you a little bit of audio. As I said, you do have mainstream media have come out here to cover this particular issue.
Who's going to look after them? Nurses and doctors. The politicians, nurses and doctors. Who's going to look after us when we're all fatigued, we're all turning around and people are leaving in droves? I only saw something on LinkedIn the other day. Another ED nurse that we could desperately need somewhere has gone FIFO. Why? Because they're paying more. The reality is we can't attract nurses to our state. We can't attract agency nurses to our state because our pay rates are not competitive. What the government needs to do is they need to be talking to a representative group of nurses from across the sector that is not the union to really get a feel for what's going on, and the government needs to turn around and call for a ministerial inquiry into the way the union has been functioning.
We also need to look at recruitment. We've got nurses in WA that are, wanting to get into the health hospital system, but if you haven't worked in a hospital within 12 months, you can't get in. If you don't have a manager's reference from a hospital, you can't get in. If you've worked in a GP practice for 5 years and want to update your skills, you can't get into the hospital system.
And if you work in aged care, you can't get into the acute system.
So we have our own nurses who have 4 to 6 year degrees that cannot get back into our healthcare system and want to help. You've got ex-retired people that wanted to come in and help.
And the rest of the nurses and midwives that need that support now. Hanging on by a thread.
You've got patients missing out on drugs. You've got patients who are missing out on bed washers where the community or their family are coming in and washing their family because the nurses don't have time. It's not good enough. My mum was in ED with heart problems. She wasn't even given water for 24 hours. I mean, it's not the nurse's fault. It is a system-wide thing, and we need to step up. Put the apathy, whatever it is, as Australians, it takes a lot to get us angry, and it takes a lot to make us rise up. But now is the time, because our community is suffering, and we are suffering.
Every other state has a union that is active, that will be out there, that will have the back, that work with the other unions. Ours are MIA. They are too busy fighting investigation after investigation. They are not looking after you guys. It should be proactive.
They have no courage, no background, and their knowledge of what they should be doing as a union is nil.
Okay, we're just going to try and see if we can get in to pick you up some better audio here. We just have a couple of nurses. Of course, I think this is Lorraine that we're seeing now. We've seen Lorraine speak.
We ANF would have been not only for nurses, but for patients and for the whole industry of health. And they would have called out the minister over things. In my opinion, at this time, we actually need a Royal Commission into the whole of health. Sam has just said about the state of nursing itself. It's the whole thing. We've never ever had such bad ministers for health, and I've been in the industry for 60 years. So I started my training at Royal Perth in 1961. I finished and was first registered in 65. And just in case you wonder, because I'm such an old lady, I was working until 2 years ago when they brought in the mandate. So I was actively working on a very busy medical ward in a peripheral public hospital. And the only reason I left was they served us up with the mandate, jab or job, and I had a 50% chance of catching COVID and dying, or a 50% chance of a severe adverse reaction. So I decided to trust in my own immune system. I haven't had COVID, and they lost and experienced in that amount of time. You gain a lot of experience across the board, so that I was a mentor to the younger nurses. And as you just said, there are people out there who would be a huge asset to the nursing profession who cannot get back in. They just can't. And it's because the minister knows nothing and cares nothing, and neither does anyone else. The health department officials, I don't know what they're doing, because they were never as inefficient as they are now. The directors of nursing, so-called, in the old days they were called matrons, and they fought for their staff, and they would fight back against the government for good health care. And the care for the nurses was equal to the care for the patients. You know, the directors of nursing were not looking at their career ladder, they were looking at what they could add to the profession and to the care of the patients, and they were out there fighting too. Where is any director of nursing today? Nobody said that no director of nursing could come to this rally today and stand up for health and stand up for the welfare of nurses. Now, some of you on Facebook will have seen that a nurse posted that one of her colleagues had worked 30 hours out of 48. 30 hours in a 48-hour stretch. In a 48-hour stretch, 30 of those were working, and another one had done a whole 24-hour stretch. And before I left the hospital that I was working in, it was commonplace for me to come on a night shift and hand over to the person that I handed over to in the morning. They weren't supposed to be 12-hour shifts. But these people had, oh, well, they didn't have anyone to take over. And we'd come on night duty, and we'd be told, oh, you'll have to work one down tonight. So-and-so went off sick, and we haven't been able to get anyone.
Who else?
And I'd say, yep, I would say to them, because I've been around a long time and knew the ropes, I said, have you closed any beds? No executive said, we can't close any beds. And I said, you need to close beds. We haven't got enough nurses.
Who's
No.
exhausted permanently?
Yep.
Who's doing overtime regularly?
Yeah.
Who's doing extra shifts regularly?
And I just want to say to you, in case we run out of time, in the meantime, there are things that we can do. We don't have to sit around and wait for the ANF to pull their finger out, because they mightn't. It's going to take a long time for us to get the number of people on council to make the union effective. But there are things we can do. Now, with the old job rep system, which Lee will remember as well as I do, we were both around when that first came into being. We remember how that used to run. You can start the same sort of thing in your hospitals. You go back and you find representatives on every ward, and you have hospital meetings, and you elect hospital delegates. And we'll go up the ladder with that. At first, your delegates will only be able to come here and speak for your hospitals, but eventually we'll get the ANF to behave itself. Work to rule. There's nothing to stop you. It will mean that you're going to have to harden your heart sometimes, and you'll have to just focus in on your shift and doing the best you can, and focus in on walking off at the end of your shift on time, even if the ward is short-staffed. Because right at the moment, the government is counting on us doing what they call the right thing. This business of you doing a double shift. Now, one young nurse came on night duty with me one night, and they had already done a full shift, and somebody was off on night shift. Now, that was their 8-hour shift plus the 10-hour night, which is not right, but pressure was put on them, and they thought they should do it for their colleagues. I know that we all care about each other, but you've got to harden your heart, and we've all got to do it. It is no good if any of us give in. This is why the government has got away with this for so long, because we do it. They know we will fall into line. And the only thing that is holding the whole of health in WA together at the present moment is nurses. Nobody else, us. We're holding the system together. And every time there's a catastrophe, like a child dying down at PCH, or some woman dying in ED over there, or whatever, they don't come right out and say, but the implication is the nursing care was not adequate. You know, we do. But how the hell are we supposed to know every in and out of every patient when we have too many patients for one nurse and we're working under the pressure that we are? It is wrong. When I left the hospital that I was working in, my ward had been a general medical ward, which incorporated all the usual medical things, plus care awaiting placement, including some severely dementia patients, and all overnight, suddenly, we turned into the respiratory stroke COVID ward. We had no extra resources or staffing at all. We were required to jump in and out of PPE every moment. We were used as the admission ward for the query COVID patients. They were turning up in ED with a sprained ankle, and if they were silly enough to sneeze, they'd end up on our ward. So you've got an increased workload. This is why you are worth so much more than 3%. In days gone by, we used to have to try and prove that our workloads had increased and blah, 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 blah. I don't know what criteria they're using now, but your workload increased exponentially during COVID. Everyone, wherever you worked.
Well, has anybody else got any stories? Yep.
So when I was 30 weeks pregnant with this one, I was attacked by a patient and admitted to my own hospital.
Okay, just trying to get you as good audio as we can get, so apologise for that. Just a couple of questions coming in here. Why are the women wearing masks? Two reasons. One, because we're just outside Royal Perth Hospital. They've mandated masks right here. And the second reason is because fear of being identified and having retributions paid back against them by the Australian Nurses Federation. So a lot of nurses here were very hesitant to turn up. I've been following this issue for some time because there seems to be a standoff between what the ANF is saying to the government, that they have the membership base, where outside of the circles and certainly in some groups of social media, that does not seem to be the case. So just going to try and get you some more commentary.
Done before without staff development support, because guess what, they're on the wards doing a clinical shift, and how many clinical nurse managers are doing a clinical shift and having to do their management load? That's what's happening on a regular basis out in WAC. They're doing huge loads, and we're constantly looking at staffing. Places are in bed, beds are in bed black. All of these things increase the pressure and increase the fatigue, not only for us on the floor, but your managers as well. I know a lot of people like to turn around and bag the managers, but they're carrying an enormous load to try to fill the holes on a day-to-day basis, and it's really, really difficult. Really difficult. And we need to be just insisting that no, this is not acceptable anymore. The government have the mechanisms to provide incentives and to provide an environment where WA is once again going to become an attractive place for nurses and midwives to come and work. Because right now we're at the bottom of the barrel. We're seeing people that want to be nurses going over east because they're going to cover their HEC step. Back in the 80s, I was one of the lucky ones back in the early 90s that managed to get through without a HEC step. The government have done it before. They can do it again. They can do it again. The government and our institutions have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace.
Yeah.
We are allowed freedom of association. We have contracts that limit what we can say about these sorts of things. That's what the union's for. The union is supposed to be there to have our backs. The union is supposed to be there to come and advocate for us, right? To protect us. That's what their job is. Where the hell are they? Where the hell are they? Where have they been? They've been too busy fighting their own internal behaviours, in all the investigations. They're so worried about that. They might as well change their address to 144 St George's Terrace, because that's where the WAIRC is, because they're down there so bloody much.
Yeah.
But the government have a responsibility for managing fatigue, for providing nurses on the floor that have got the skills to support, to train up our new nurses that are coming through, so that they're not scared off. We need to
The
be...
amount of people that we had that was so scared to come today because of the government. And McGowan's, when he was in, was all the comments that he said about nurses rallying and how we were
He
treated.
deserved for us to all walk off there and then.
Yeah, there are many nurses that are scared to come today.
Yeah.
For fear.
We've got a Labor government that doesn't support us, that says we can't strike. I'm not sure why anybody tells me I can't take
We're not
my-
striking.
No, they told us we couldn't strike.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh, you're talking about the last rally?
Fine the union for not striking. For
Yeah.
striking, it's like, sorry, but that's my basic right to withdraw
The,
Labor.
the government, the union were fined because they didn't follow the procedures that every other union follows when they want to do a protected action strike, because it didn't follow into their agenda.
Which I gather under the International Labour Organisation agreement that the Australian government signed, what they're doing is illegal. Right? I gather.
Yep. Yep.
Service insurance and stuff like that. But again, what's the practical solutions? Look how many people have turned up here today.
But don't be
This is what-
discouraged by
Don't
that.
be
This is what
discouraged.
we're fighting against. isn't
Yep.
it?
Yep.
Apathy plus what
Exactly.
people scared,
Apathy.
and people scared of the
But what
government.
I need from you guys is for you guys to go away. Each of you have a purposeful conversation at home with friends, family, co-workers. I want each of you to commit to yourself to be agents of change, because if Jesus can change the world with 12 disciples, what can we do here with 40 people?
Exactly. The police are going to walk out.
Okay? But, you know,
We're safer than Royal Perth at the
We
moment.
do have the
Police have
power.
run over there.
we need to find our voice and take our power back and tell this government how it's going to be. We are standing up for this community. We are standing up for ourselves, our family. I am sick to death of telling, when I had toddlers, that I would not see them for 48 hours doing a late early shift. That is it. We are done. We need to stand up.
should have supported us a lot over the last year to take a lot more action.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We also need to call to account our colleagues, because Sam will give you the details. She's good at remembering figures. But of this so-called huge membership that we've got,
40,000?
an infinitesimal amount vote in elections. Now, you know, if you pay your union fees, for God's sake, mark a piece of paper and vote for a responsible council. We're in this situation as much because of our colleagues who've got their hand out waiting for the next wage rise, and they want the ratios and they want everything else, but we have got to stand up and fight for it for them. So you don't have to get into a fisticuffs about it, but you do have to touch their consciences and say, hang on, pull your finger out and pull your weight.
Don't be discouraged. You know, this is organised in about a week.
Less than a week.
Less than a week. We were given the 22nd of December, 3 days before Christmas. We go down into low activity. We have elective surgery that goes into shutdown. We only do emergency surgery. So we don't need as many people there. People are going on holidays. It's school holidays. It was deliberate. It was deliberate by government and was deliberate by the union to insist that A vote is done over this period of time because guess what? Not only is there less people to come and rally and to get behind and make a noise, there aren't the government agencies that we need to be ringing, to be organising X, Y and Z, to ask questions, to make sure that we're not breaking the rules, to make sure that we're doing it in an informed way. Guess what? They're all shut down. It's been deliberate, absolutely deliberate. We've been given no option to say no. This is rubbish.
No, it's not even there.
We shouldn't be having to trade off our basic PD and these sorts of things to get a pay rise. I mean, you know, there should be every other union that I know that's turned around and for an EBA vote, they've got a no option.
Always should be a no option. Yeah.
And what we don't know, because we're not being told, is whether or not that's come from the government or that's come from the union.
Or whether they did
And
it
there's so
personally
much
or
PR spin that comes out of Pier Street, it's not funny.
The preceptor allowance option wasn't an option because it's only giving remuneration to 1.8s and 2.4s.
Yep, so the preceptor
And
one
I
was...
have to say, even 1.1s are taking on students
Exactly.
as preceptors.
Yep.
Every single level
Yep.
is teaching staff, especially at the moment with the amount of trained staff. So
Yep.
a lot of graduates
Absolutely.
coming through, they're replacing experienced
Yep.
staff. And to then say that you're only going to give an allowance to 1.8s and 2.4s
Yep.
is insulting.
It's insult, exactly.
Yeah.
Not only that, but how many people have got CNSs that they look up to? You know, your nurse managers, all of these. They're training the next lot of leaders coming through as well. They're completely ignored.
Yeah.
And even the PD rubbish that they're trying to do,
Targeting the
it
PD
goes
is
from
wrong because it's
700
supposed to
to
be a professional.
1400 pre-tax.
Yeah,
That's equivalent to like one extra shift.
it's
I mean, come on,
discouraging
guys.
people from getting
It's
Development.
insulting. It's insulting to even think that the union would think that that would be okay. It's insulting from the government to think that we would think that that's okay.
But you made a really good point there too. And they were supposed to be doing their work and mentoring, and there was no one over the top of them to mentor them. And
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not any experience to
You know,
Exactly.
the really sad thing.
Yes,
Yep.
so there's a couple of things. I just wanted to say that I find it offensive with regards to, the fact that when we were looking at the personal development, professional development.
So we're just having somebody here ask a question. I really apologise for the audio. They've got themselves in a tight huddle, and it is quite hard to be able to get in without impacting on what they are trying to achieve here. Even mainstream is the other side, and they've been squeezed out. So we're trying to bring you what we can.
The second EBA that they just offered today, I had a number of junior staff come to me and asked, do I even know what's happening with professional development leave after 3 years? It looks like we're actually taking it back. And Janet has basically said...
Okay, so, and I'm just going to pick up on a few comments just while this person, because it's hard for me to get in there, and plenty of comments. We certainly see those that in relation to the support that the nurses did or did not get, more in particular, for during the past couple of years, and I think I'll just leave it at that in terms of that. But Lorraine is the nurse that you've just heard. She's had over 45 years experience. She certainly said that she stopped work at the beginning of the introduction of the mandates. So hopefully you can join the dots with that, because this stream is to talk about the standoff, I guess, between what seems to be the membership base and the Australian Nurses Federation.
These are the two offers we've got on the table. Let's focus
This is what the union do. This is what the union do. They tell you a percentage, but they don't tell you the number. If it's only 400, you've got, what is it, 0.1 or 0.01% of our membership. We've got 40,000 members, right? Even if they were to get 5,000 responses, that's still a pittance of our membership. You know, I'd rather see that there is a vote that comes out from the department that turns around and goes, righto, everybody gets this through your HE email and you vote on it. And you can vote no if that's an option. But there's too much spin. We don't know what's actually been on offer. We're just getting it from the union.
Anna, your answer to that question is yes.
Sorry?
Why can't we do a digital vote?
Oh, yeah.
Elections.
Look,
Why is it still postal? Someone's turned up today.
Well, somebody sent me a picture today of their AEC ballot paper from November, and it says, please make sure you post it by the 13th of the 11th, and it arrived today.
Mine arrived the day before or day off.
And in the past, we would have had, at the minimum, 3 big rallies, you know, in a great big forum. We would have had, and the membership would have been there, they would have been bussed in from their workplaces, they would have had formal motions about whether they accepted that clause or whether they didn't. The membership could put up their own amendments if they wanted to, but it was open and transparent, everybody had their say, and they openly voted. This is not happening.
We've been calling, and there's a few councillors here that are obviously in the minority on council that have been trying to push to get some transparency, and it just keeps being slammed down. You know, they removed proxy voting from the rules. How good would that be? We have an AGM or we have a special meeting, and your workplace reps can go around and get your proxy votes, and then somebody can turn up with 400 proxy votes, where all the people out in the regional areas are actually able to have their say for once. You know,
They're really
and
doing
it's
it tough, aren't they? I mean, how much support do they get?
oh yeah, they get nothing. They get
No funding,
somebody
no
contacted
staff.
me from way up North Wyndham somewhere to say that, you know, we feel like we're caught between a rock and a hard place. The ANF do absolutely nothing for us. They absolutely nothing. And then we've got the Red Union, because that's over Queensland Way and up that way, and everything's not as good as it seems there either, because they've got their own agendas as well. And it's like, we've got all these workplace issues. They've got, you know, obviously it's really hard to get staff up there, and nobody's coming up and listening. Nobody's coming up and bothering to talk to them, to work about it. You know, unions that should be there being proactive, as well as turning around and jumping up and down when it's required. We've seen our scope of practice erode over years, with allied health constantly eroding into what it is that we do.
Yes.
Why are they? Where is the union? Why aren't they going into bat for us to say absolutely not? Keep your bloody hands off. And we can do
There's
better.
some very simple
They
things
can
the
do better.
government can do. I mean, we don't have the jab mandates in Perth anymore, but in Wax, I believe they still have them. And I don't want to bring that into this issue, but there are nurses, when I was working up in Geraldton, that couldn't go back to the workplace. I mean, they're so grossly understaffed. I think it's like 80% of their staffing is agency. I lost my contract because of that reason. There are things that are very simple. Cut the bullshit and the red tape. Get nurses back on the floor. We don't need mandates. Why do the Wax need mandates?
Not only that, because of areas like that where such a bulk is covered by agency staff, provide remuneration for your permanent staff that are on the floor holding it together in every hospital in the state. It's no good just giving an incentive to get casualty to plug a hole. I mean, it's been a government and private policy for 15 years. We've got a workforce shortage, let's just go overseas. Well, let's just recruit overseas, because that way we don't have to train. There's been no additional training, no additional graduate programs put in all of this time. And guess what? COVID turned off the tap and it's not come back on. In fact, WHO have come out and turned around and said that it's absolutely immoral for Western countries to be turning around and actively trying to recruit from developing countries, because they need it far more than we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's all these little things that we don't know and don't get told about that goes on that is mitigating against us having an adequate workforce. There are not enough grad places out there, but if you don't get a grad place, you're discriminated against for the rest of your career.
Yep.
We had a young, extremely efficient nurse out at my hospital. She hadn't been able to get a grad year, so she went out and found herself a job. She was working with older nurses who had lots of experience. She learnt lots of stuff. She came to our hospital, couldn't get a permanent position, so was casual. She was prepared to work in any area of the hospital, which meant that she gained all that experience. Every time she went for a permanent position, they came up with, you didn't do a grad year. And I said to her one day after a couple of years, I said, you know what, you need to get out of here and apply to a country hospital. And she went to a country for 3 years, she was valued, she learnt more things, she came back, and then of course she was able to get a job at Charlie's. You know,
We shouldn't
this
have
is
these
ridiculous.
recruitment barriers.
Ridiculous.
So, anyway, anyone else want to speak before we kind of wrap it up?
I've been a nurse for 43 years. I'm over
Good
it.
on you.
I'm over listening to all of this. I'm passionate. If we don't start looking after our nurses, then all the thanks in the world is going to go absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
We're losing experienced, wonderful, amazing nurses who go over and above.
Yeah.
And I am just fed up to the teeth of listening to our politicians, our bureaucrats, everyone else. I've just recently had my husband having surgery here. He's only come out in the last few days, and let me tell you, the amount of nurses that said to me they were doing double shift was not good enough. I am absolutely appalled. I'm beyond words anymore. I'm angry. I want to protest. I want to get in the street. It doesn't affect me. You're all affected with your mortgage, your rentals. It does not affect me, and I'm prepared to go to jail for it. You know, if it's like a climate change person, I don't care. I've had enough. I was absolutely dedicated to my profession, and it was a profession. And it still is a profession, and in fact it's more so now because of all the technology we have. And it's about time people looked after our nurses, because everyone in this community will complain, and I certainly saw many things recently in the last few days I was horrified with. And let me tell you, until the community stand up, and everyone here with their cameras and every journalist, until you all stand up, and you can see I'm really rattled, until you all stand up and say enough's enough. You know what? Nurses are leaving to go to mining jobs.
Why not?
They are everywhere. I'll tell you, they have had enough. They have to work double shifts. They're inundated with text messages. You know, it's just enough. They have families, not only children, partners, they have caring situations, and here they are treated like second-rate citizens.
We're taking our voice back, and we're going to take our power back, and we're going to grow from this. We're going to go out, be committed, and we're going to re-rally and get back to you guys with dates. Can I get everyone...
Come the revolution.
We're going to
We have to.
We need to start closing beds.
Yeah.
I need everyone...
I know, I was there.
We can do it again.
And I think we
23
have
years
to
is
call
not like
out
this
our dons and our managers who are up the top and they're not advocating for you.
Yeah.
So what did that, the vote we had before, when we voted for all those raft of things that we did, what happened to all that? I know we weren't the strike business, but what happened to all the other stuff? We didn't vote not to do that, did
what
we?
was this? The rolling
Yeah.
industrial action. So we had the rolling industrial action. That was all fine. That was all passed. It was staged step by step by step. We were all informed, but that didn't go into the timeline. That was the election.
Fizzled out.
It wasn't quite doing that. So by September, we really needed to ramp up lots and lots of noise because we needed to get Janet front and centre.
Yep.
I have asked Janet.
And it
specifically
went
what
from
happened to
this
all that stuff.
Did
to
you get a
this.
response?
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, she always responds. Doesn't matter how angry I am. She gets
Well, at least you get one.
You must have a very lovely smile because many other people
But I
can't
mean,
get a
just,
response.
to,
We
you
can't
know,
get a
it was all
response from her.
premeditated. To give you an idea, the bus was hired in the
Yeah.
middle of September.
would sort this out in no time.
Yep,
Precisely.
yep, work to rule.
Exactly.
Because they can't make you work past
Yep,
your
come in, Lee, come and address
So,
everyone.
You know, like it's just ridiculous. If the union was to follow the plan that you were talking about, which part of that was
Yep.
an overtime ban,
Yep.
we would have certainly had a lot better
Yep.
response to it.
Yep, yep,
Yeah. But we
yep. It
will
just went from here to here with the strike, and then
Yeah.
we all know what happened then.
Yeah.
Because you know, there was deliberate timing involved in all of that.
You've got to develop very much a very critical political mind so that you recognise what's going on and what they're playing at. But if we keep this up, the union will be running along behind trying to catch up with us, and then they'll have to perform.
So what we'll see in the next days, we'll see statements coming out from government, statements coming out from the department. We'll see statements coming out from the union saying, you know, there's either an individual beef coming here or it's only just a small group of nurses. We're here representing hundreds of nurses, each one of us. Right? Because they're doing double shift, because they're tired, they're sleeping. You know, 1 in 3 nurses are on shift and 1 in 3 nurses is sleeping, which means that there's only 1 shift out of 3 where there's nurses available.
Yeah.
So go figure.
I don't know one nurse in this state that's happy, and over the last 10 years, I haven't spoken to one that's happy with the not just wages, but conditions.
We'll see.
I need each person on the West Australian Nurses and Midwives Facebook page. We need to start collating email addresses and numbers, because I need, when we organise the next rally, I need to be able to let you know. And at the moment, this is why we have low numbers. I can't reach people. So each, I need to be able to get that
That's
sorted.
right.
So
And
please.
that's why the union is in incumbency. It's so hard to fight against, because they've got all the resources, they've got all the addresses, they've got all these things that they, by the way, shouldn't be using during an election.
And each one of
Okay.
you must go back to your hospitals tomorrow and start gathering people up and identifying representatives on every ward so that you can get your information out, you can get information to us, you will know when we're going to have a rally and what it's going to be about. You can do this yourself.
Yep.
And then you will start to have proper representation.
We're going to see statistics come out. Oh, we hired 13 more grads. Yeah, but who's covering the grads? Who's teaching the grads?
Yeah.
We've done this hire. We've done that. We've done that.
What
we're
about
not
how many
seeing it
hospitals
on the
they've
ground.
knocked out?
We are not seeing it on the
PCH?
ground.
Yep.
You
How
know,
many hospitals?
you know, I'd love for them to turn around and do an analysis of what the cost of all the agency staffing is, and then turn around and offer 25% of that as a wage rise to everybody, and they would still end up on top if we had permanent staff.
Well, did you hear today, Defence have lost staff. So what have they done? Given them 50,000 one-off to keep them retained.
Yeah.
AMWU, I've posted it up on the page, have just received, I think it was a 544 or 543 or something like this. Just signed an agreement with one of the with somebody just recently, because they're a strong union that has a membership that gets behind them. They're part of the union movement, and they can make an influence. All this whole fluff and bother about political parties, all the rest of it, it's just grasping at straws. They don't understand the mechanism.
Yeah.
Sometimes ignoring
And
that the government wants to put our ratios as a part of our EPA areas as well, which I think is
It's disgusting.
It should be a
It's
purity.
patient safety. We want ratios for patient safety.
yes, yes.
They're trading, that's right, they're trading off patient safety as a bargaining chip for a short-term gain.
Dependencies. Whoever was need dependent staffing would be allocated accordingly.
And I have to tell you, it's not that hard. The hospital that I, sorry,
Yep. So in the last month,
Even a midwife in Carnarvon. Yeah.
in the last month, Glengarry and St John of God Mount Lawley
Yep.
have closed their maternity services. These are institutions that have had 50 years or more history. They can't find
70.
nurses. They can't find. Some of them are having trouble getting anaesthetists up to do obstetric anaesthetics, and the increased risk.
and that's the whole thing.
Bentley's going as well.
No, it's fine.
Corporate.
4 years now. Yeah.
Did we see one comment from the union about closing the maternity services at any of these places? No. No. You know, at the end of the day, the government are going to try to do the best deal for themselves, and it's up to our union to fight hard for us. The government need to respect us a hell of a lot more, because guess what? We can all go to work to rule and round things to a halt. Stop doing double shifts. Stop doing all these extra work. Stop doing 12-hour shifts. Because guess what? It's unsafe.
Ratios, that would be
Even the ratios, we don't have enough staff to implement the ratios. So we've got to have incentives to bring people in to meet the ratios.
Yeah.
You know, government need to come and talk to us on the floor
On how to do it.
not to the union, because there's a clear distrust there, and they're using that to their advantage.
Yeah.
Consequences be to the government if you can't implement the ratios? If they're saying they're bringing it in on a certain date, what will the implications be for the government if that's not able to
There
be
isn't any.
done? So how is it going to get enacted then? So it's not really a thing, is it? It's
Well,
not
you're
even-
expecting the union would turn around and step up, or they take them to the IRC. That's the only other mechanisms that you've got.
And that's not going to happen with our
Who's
current
who's
union.
got
But that
faith?
is the
Who's got
government
faith in the
anyway, the
union and the
IRC.
leadership? Right, nobody, and that's half the problem.
So that's the thing, we just need better pay so we can implement the ratios.
That's right. That's right. You would have it. You'd be able to keep people. They'd be encouraged to turn around
and
say,
have
hey, you
more.
know, how many of us hear of somebody who's thinking about doing nursing and go, you're nuts?
I've tried talking for
How many people do? How many young ones do we see that think they want to do nursing, and we go, you're nuts? Don't worry, find something
They
else.
don't want to hex them, let alone a poor pay.
Yeah.
No way.
Being sat on or poo thrown at you. Or...
That's right. That's
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on the teachers. You know, I mean, something that would have helped all of us, well not all of us, that would have been really beneficial was free parking.
Yeah.
We've got about half a dozen hospitals in Perth where staff have to pay. Everybody else doesn't have to pay.
Yeah.
So guess what? Everybody else has got a relative pay rise compared to what people here have to do, or anywhere else
I've
that's
actually,
got paid parking.
with the wage increase, when I started a new position last year, had my last $20 for the week, and I'm like, do I spend this on food for my children, or do I put it into the parking machine and pay for my parking so I can work and get a paycheck? So what do you do? We shouldn't be in this situation.
The government needs to come and talk to us.
Because
Because
nurses
the
travel a
message
huge
gets filtered. The
amount.
message is getting filtered on the way up and on the way down. The message gets filtered. Just a sponge layer at every level. Hey?
Highly skilled should mean highly paid.
Exactly right. And we need a ministerial inquiry, because
A royal
what is
commission.
happening?
All the
No,
way.
into the union, number one, and then a royal commission.
Into
We
health.
should be going for 20%, 10% a year.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We are so far behind the rest of the state.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'll take inflation, which was around 7, and the government's pay offer of 3%. That's 10% for our historical negotiations from October 22 to now. Then let's meet and negotiate going forward.
And it's great to see more people coming again. We know that it's only a small group.
For every one
But-
of you here, there's
but-
100.
We know the reasons why. It's deliberate, that it's been done at this time. We've only got a certain amount that we can be able to get access to. Yep.
Thank you.
Turn up and bring a friend
We'd
next
love
time.
to get your guys' story out because all from different media messages. If one or two of you just wanted to chat about what you guys are after, just the headlines. We'll just go keep going, like,
God.
keep going.
I know.
Couple, maybe one or two.
Can you hold this?
Yes.
My other,
Yeah, sure.
just sort of angle it a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of want to buy that.
Oh, okay.
Is it just me or do you want to buy that? I don't want to.
Well, then it goes down with Beck.
I say completely still like that for long. I need to just give up. My feet have gone dead and my knees have given out.
Indy, do you want to come and hold this for Lindsay?
Whoever's going to chat, we'll get you up nice and close to the mic, okay?
Mum, come up.
You come with me.
No, I'll come up with you. People stand around the back so they can get
Yeah,
it
you
in
can
the-
all get
in
around the
the-
back, that's fine. You guys all good to go? Can we start with your first and last name and the spelling of both?
My name's Kirsty, but I won't be spelling.
Yeah, that's okay. No
Thank
worries.
you.
I guess, tell us why you gathered here today.
We're really unhappy with the government and the union's negotiations of 3%. We were given two options, take option A or B. The majority of nurses that I speak to and the feedback online is we want option C, which is no deal, go back and negotiate and get serious. Yeah, we want a serious offer. Given to honestly reflect the work that we've done over the pandemic and I don't know.
I understand the vote closes tomorrow. I guess.
Yep.
Do you think you guys can make a change now? Has people already voted, or is there?
Look, there's lots of people that have voted, and yeah, that is an individual choice. Where I'm personally abstaining from voting, there are other nurses and midwives doing the same as a way of letting the government and the union know that we're not happy with either of their behaviour. We were the heroes, treat us as such. We deserve respect and to be honoured fairly for that.
I understand this has been going on for quite some time, this pay dispute. I guess, do you guys see a resolution to it? What do you want done now?
Look, I think the thing with the pay resolution is, there's been a change in policy from the government of their public sector wage policy, and it was quite frankly insulting that on the Sunday when they were hard and fast doing a presser somewhere saying this is all, we think this is a fair deal, and then the very next day they turn around and say we're now going to lift it, we're now going to do individual EBAs. Why? You've got a May budget coming up in an election year. We know the pork barrelling is going to start. The reality is we have a workforce that is highly fatigued. Nurses are leaving in droves from fatigue. We don't have anything to attract nurses. The government will come out and turn, but we've got this, we've got that. On the ground, it's making no difference at all. We are the lowest paid in the country. We don't have incentives for new nurses. All our numbers at the universities, last time I heard, hadn't been filled. We're competing with the eastern states, so there are Victoria, for example, are paying the HECSTAT for nurses. We are struggling to get agency, and what's happening is that when we are getting it, we're paying this huge amount because they're leaving it to the very last minute because they're all going up over east and taking up more lucrative offers. We need offers that are going to support our permanent staff that have been taking the load. The fatigue levels, the double time, the 12-hour shifts, the 24-hour shifts, the nurses up north that are doing 100 hours a fortnight of on-call on top of their rostered hours. This is unsafe. There is a responsibility expect for the government to provide a safe work environment, and that includes fatigue management, and you are not going to do that until you can attract nurses here.
Yep.
The union is supposed to have our backs.
What has the union been doing wrong in this period?
To begin with, transparency. They tell us that you don't have any other choice. You've only got a choice from A or B. We haven't heard that from the government. We've only heard that from the union. We don't trust what the union are saying anymore. We haven't even seen the log of claims that they put forward to the government. They just keep, smoke and mirrors all the time.
What pay deal would you guys like? Obviously the union initiative is a 5%. What do you think is appropriate?
We're so far behind now that we would be looking at what a lot of the other unions are starting to do. CFMU are looking at about 20% or something like this over 3 years. This is what we're wanting. We're going to need to have a big adjustment because over the last 10 years we've seen this erosion and we need to have a correction. So we're going to need to be seeing at least, 10 to 20% over the next 3 or 4 years to bring it back up to a reasonable standard. But not only that, we need numbers. It's not just good enough saying, okay, well, we'll give you this, but we're going to cut the numbers on the floor. We're fighting for patient safety, for community safety. Ratios should not be on the cards because it's a patient safety issue. We know that it's government policy. It was passed at state exec, at the state conference for Labor. It is government policy. The union keep telling us that they won't start it without it. That's not come from the government. That's come from the union. It's not come from the government.
Anything less than inflation is a pay cut, is seriously insulting nurses and midwives of this state, and we deserve better. And it's not just about the money. We've all got mortgages, we've all got rent to pay, put food on the table for our children, but if we do not make this an attractive workforce for people and young people to grow into and make it an attractive choice, then it will not be a safe system for people to turn to.
Is there a pay deal you guys agree on that you think, obviously...
We need to slowly build numbers. We haven't had the time, less than a week to get this rally up and going. Lack of contact details, but we will grow it and
the
talk further.
The timing's actually very, very deliberate, very suspicious. 22nd of December it comes out. Elective surgery's gone on hold. Your staffing numbers have gone down. People are on holidays. It's vacation. It's school holidays. It's Christmas time. The government departments that we need to talk to make sure that we're doing everything right, that we're not going to break any rules or anything, they're all away. It's all closed. Yeah. We can't talk to them. And the deadline's tomorrow. Government, it's all shut up shop. Pollies are all on holidays.
Nobody will be back for another week or two.
They don't go back until the middle of February when they're sitting. So, we're cornered.
Yeah.
It's not right.
So you mentioned lack of transparency by the ANF.
Yep.
Is there anything that you're aware of within the Constitution that ensures the return votes by tomorrow are in fact paid up financial members of the union, or can anybody vote?
No, so the vote is the poll is being done on iFolio, which is their internal website, and there is nothing on there that's given us an indication that non-public sector can actually vote on it. We never see what the total numbers are of their polls. It's always a percentage, it's all smoke and mirrors in numbers. Now, I expect after today the government are going to come out, somebody's going to be a spokesperson and come out and talk about all these incentives and all these things that they're doing and the number of nurses that they're getting in and all the rest of it. But on the floor, it's not making any difference. Our midwives are in a serious state. We've seen Glengarry Hospital and St John of God's Mount Lawley and Bentley have all closed their maternity services. Partly because there's not enough midwives.
I've just left midwifery. I'm a nurse midwife.
There's not enough midwives.
I doubt I'll go back.
Everyone's leaving midwifery.
Yeah.
And sorry, are you encouraging people to vote no, or that's not even an option, so you're encouraging people to
We don't have the choice to vote no.
We don't have the choice. People are abstaining. People are abstaining. What I haven't been able to find out by going through the IR Act is there a minimum number required? We have 40,000 members in the union. There is around 15,000 of those are in the public sector. We haven't been able to find out, is there a minimum number we need to get? Because if only 1,000 people turn around and actually bother to fill in their survey, and you get 500 or 400, 600, that's affecting 15,000 people. There should be a minimum number. The vote should be coming out from government, like a lot of other organisations do. So it goes to our emails and it's a vote so that we know that it's actually legitimate. Anything that comes through that, is for discovery. It needs to be discoverable, so it all has to be transparent and on the line.
That's good.
Could we just grab your name as well?
Sam.
Just want to ask a question about patient ratios, because that is part of something that the government has actually promised and committed to.
Well, they've had to, haven't they?
Yet they are now offering this as part of their deal. Janet Ray was very clear and staunch back in November 2022 saying 3% was an insult, yet she's advocating that you take it now.
Yeah.
Can you confirm, the midwife, can you confirm if a mother and a baby once born is counted as 2 patients or 1?
The baby, if being well, is counted as a boarder, so receives no funding or allocated midwifery time on the floor. So you have to fit in all observations, vaccinations, blood sugar monitoring, if that baby requires any further jaundice levels, phototherapy. We have babies on the ward from 1.8 kilos, sometimes 1.7 kilos. Those mothers are unable to feed those babies. They take about 30 to 40 minutes to feed. If they don't suck on the ward, they go to the nursery. We don't have that time, so we have to take that time away from other mothers, from other patients, and that's when patient safety is put at risk. Because we don't get that time, errors are made. Sometimes medications are missed. Sometimes you might get a medication double. You get a raft of errors that can occur, and it's very unsafe. And it's absolutely exhausting. And if you actually put your hand up and speak for safety, I can personally attest to it doesn't work out for you well professionally. Babies do not count at the moment, not on the ward. Not until that baby hits the nursery does that baby then actually get a funded staff member. But that baby, a similar baby in the nursery, can also have the same care needs on the ward, but receive no funding.
And I have to say that before I went to the government hospital that I was most recently employed, I worked in the private sector, and ratios are not a new thing. In the private sector, we actually had a tool that worked out at what level of care the mother was. Our babies were separate, and even the baby that was fully cared for by the mother had a classification of 1, which required a minimum number of nursing hours in a shift, and we worked that out at the end of each shift and established how many more staff we required to deal with that number of patients. So ratios is not a brand new thing that we're asking for. It's something that the government has completely ignored for as long as I can remember, while other private hospitals were actually implementing them. Yeah. So we're going backwards here. And the other thing I really want to say is that a lot was written in the media, and eventually the rates were raised for the lowest paid employees in the workforce. And these were the people with the minimum amount of qualification and expertise, and they decided they really needed a rise. But if you keep giving rises to the lowest paid, least qualified people in the community, you've got to think very seriously what you're doing with people at our professional level where so much is demanded of us, because you're gradually bringing the one up and the other down, and people like us are squashed in the middle. And you have no idea what not only the professional requirements that we prove that we do every year, but it's the increased responsibility, and it is in the increased oversight by the registering authority, which is walking all over us. You go to work looking over your shoulder every day, because if anything goes wrong, sure as eggs, the registering authority will be first in line after your scalp.
Yep. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Just ask and stand.
I just want to have a go at them too.
Excuse me, Chrissy. You're a midwife, is that right?
So I just want to ask you this particular question. It seems the WA Police received 3% and a $3,000 what they're calling cost of living bonus. Do you think it's clear that the ANF have made it to the union base that option B is a performance, self-development payment that they're pro-ratering, and those that offer or opt for option B, that they are foregoing that in the next EBA negotiation?
Look, I think there's two things. We received a $3,120 one-off cost of living payment the year before. We haven't received a second one. So the two options are a level 1.8 or a 2.4. We'll get $1,200 as a professional as a mentoring.
Yeah.
However, as people have said in the rally, that you've got people that are mentoring from first year out, second year out, all the way up. There's nothing recognising the amount of mentoring that's required by our managers to develop our next lot of leaders. So we're not getting people interested to step up to take that lead when they go, because there's nothing there. In relation to the professional development, so we had 2 days of professional development leave and a payment. So they negotiated last time that we could, if it's not used after those 2 days, you could cash it out. So what they've turned around now is to say that we will give you from a 1.1 to a 1.4, I think it is, $700, from a 1.5 to a 1.8, $1,100, from a 2.1 to a 2.4, $1,100. For level 3s, level 3, 4 and 5.
Works out to $13 a week.
My understanding though with option B is that the government are looking to take that away, so the next round of EBA negotiations you won't have that as a base.
Well, we don't know because it's so vague and not articulated very clearly and being transparent. We don't know what is going to be on offer in the future, and I don't think that should be gambled.
And look, and I guess, you know, the premise of an EBA negotiation is that any new negotiation, you should not be worse off. That's the baseline premise of it all. So if they're going to turn around and say that's not on the table and it's worse, then they're not meeting that baseline. And in an EBA negotiation, as far as I'm concerned, everything's on the table. If you want us, everything's on the table. It's how good your negotiators are about getting that. What other unions have managed to do is that they have managed to look at a lot of the other conditions underneath the base rate to bump up their wages. UWU, for example, managed to get the average EN raise to just over 5% because they looked at all these other mechanisms to get it up, because they had decent people negotiating.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure whether Mainstream want to grab you just briefly or whether you're interested in that, but thank you very much for the explanation there. So there we go. We tried to bring you as best we could. It was very hard with the audio. You can see Mainstream have grabbed their little grabs and gone away. There's a couple of interesting things that I took out of that. That the Constitution under the ANF does not have a minimum return, meaning that of their 40,000 financial members, that they don't have to have 10% voting to enable the vote for the options A or B to count. There is no option no, as in no deal, so the nurses don't have a choice. It seems another gun to the head. You either have to opt for option A or option B. which is 3%, and just a slight difference in the professional development bonus, that you would get a once-off bonus, and that there is nothing within the guidelines of the returns that would enable a person who's not a member of the union to go in and register votes. I guess political terms, whether that's branch stacking or not, but you could quite easily have somebody sitting there going in a number of times. I did ask the question before we started, multiple times, that they could go in and vote multiple times. There's no now that the multiple is yet to be confirmed. I only just have that on the good authority or the word of somebody that I have taken to understand the system quite well. But what is clear is that there is no mechanism to prevent anybody that's not a financial member from actually voting. So on that note, I think we're just going to sign off here. We'll probably pan around just to show this is Royal Perth Hospital. We're on the gardens here of actually St Mary's Cathedral. And thank you to those that have commented. Apologies for the audio, not much we could really do there. We did have our second mic, but we just couldn't get it to work when we tested that. But that's some interesting scenes and comments that you've seen here in WA. So I see one of the speakers there, Lorraine, a nurse of some 45 years experience behind. She is talking to the West Australian now. Hopefully they're able to get their point out. So yes, first stream of the year. Thank you to those that have joined in. We're following those people that you've heard speak are certainly we have seen and spoken to them on a number of occasions over the last 3 years. So on that note, I think we're just going to sign off and say thank you very much for tuning in. And I guess we'll watch this space to see what happens with the, there is some unrest, it's clear, between the membership base and the Australian Nursing Union. All is not as smooth as they say, suggest that it is. As the question you may have heard, Janet Ray was clearly saying November 2022 that the deal that they're being offered now was an insult. Today she's telling nurses, directing them to take one of the two options. So yes, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.